Warmest greetings to you, dear viewers. You are watching OBN Horn of Africa. This is our weekly program, Future Africa, and I'm Fantambalet hosting this program. In this episode, we will be discussing indigenous knowledge and its practices in Ethiopia with my special guest, Kamil Nureddin, Director for Culture, Language, and Indigenous Knowledge at Walkite University. Till the end of our program, stay with us. Kamil, thank you very much for your time and welcome to this program.
It's my pleasure.
Would you tell us a bit about yourself, please?
My name is Kamil Nureddin, and I worked for about 16 plus years in teaching, solid teaching experience in high school and in the university, and at the same time college. And I'm responsible for focal person maybe, for indigenous knowledge, culture and language in the university. And last year I produced one book which mainly focuses on language, and I have put my fingerprint in literature world. So in the coming time I may have my own land share in this area.
Today we are going to discuss indigenous knowledge and its practices in Ethiopia. To just begin with, how can we define indigenous knowledge and its practices?
Before we directly define what indigenous knowledge, we better define first knowledge. Okay. Yeah, knowledge is something that we grasp from personal experience. Knowledge emanates from the individual person, and that can transfer and communicate to the public, and it may have its own insights, and it is a result of our surrounding practice. So the surrounding practice will help us to know and be conscious of certain things, so that kind of understanding and conscious of things will result knowledge. And when you come to indigenous knowledge is a knowledge that we produce by having ecological knowledge. We can define it by ecological knowledge, meaning environmental knowledge that can go down to the coming generation, maybe in oral means of transmission. So the means that we transfer indigenous knowledge is oral transmission, which may not be placed and documented in written form. So that kind of knowledge is supposed to be indigenous knowledge.
Great. How does indigenous knowledge help resolve conflicts?
Now, first let's define what conflict is. Okay. Conflict is simply divergent in interest. So people, they are different in attitude, in their experience, in exposure, the knowledge they have, the thinking they developed. Due to this and that facts, they will have differences. So difference of interests will result in conflict. So whenever there is a conflict, there are means or mechanisms to resolve that conflict. So we might have different kinds of mechanisms to resolve the conflict. So indigenous knowledge, as we defined, it is traditional knowledge, it is ecological knowledge, it's environmental knowledge, it is local area knowledge. It is the knowledge that we grown up. So the conflict may be emanated from person, maybe from the local area. So the solution has to be from local ground. It has to be traditional based. So that basis will give rise for the solution for that particular problem. So the problems or the conflicts are local area problems. So local area problems naturally demands local area knowledge. So local area knowledge is defined as indigenous knowledge. So it may have its own vital for the resolving of that particular problem. So indigenous knowledge naturally will give, immediate and inclusive and holistic solution for that particular and defined, territorially defined problems. So it is very vital in resolving that kind of problems.
How do leaders apply indigenous knowledge for peace building?
I doubt, I may have, I'm afraid to say they understand it. So not the leaders, even educators and scientists, those who have examined and investigated various problems and reached for the scientific knowledge. In general, scientific communities in general, they may not have deep inside understanding of indigenous knowledge, so that this kind of problem expanded to the larger community, to the larger public, and the governments and government leaders and policy makers and office holders, they did not give sufficient and required attention for the indigenous knowledge, but it has its own pivotal role in resolving conflicts, and not only resolving conflict, but giving everlasting solution for the conflict emanated within particular area. So it has immense advantage for the public and even the government and the larger community.
How do traditional methods compare to formal legal systems?
Actually, they are unique by their character, but they are a little bit similar in their function. If you take their function, most of the time, the mediation will works for the traditional system, but for the formal legal system, it has its own procedures. When you think and take their procedures, they look like almost the same, the procedures. And their objective is almost the same. They have similar objective. Their ultimate objective is to solve the problem and finally to give a solution for the disputes. And the parties will present in the public, in front of the judge or the traditional judge, and they present their issues, and finally the case will be investigated, final solution will be provided. But there is a little bit different between them. The difference in the formal legal system, most of the time it has a binding role, and it has to be enforced, okay? But when it comes to the traditional or the indigenous conflict resolution mechanism, it is up to the individual to accept or to reject the solution proposed. And when you think the traditional or the indigenous conflict resolution mechanism, it has a win-win approach. Both parties will benefit from the decision made. Whereas when you come to the formal legal system, the decision provided is to a single individual or one of the opponents, the one who presented the cases and defended well and presented with appropriate evidences will get the privilege, and the solution, I mean the decision will be up to that individual. When you come to that of the traditional, they have a kind of forensic investigation mechanisms. They have to find out the deep in-depth facts by the supernatural provided powers. So this and that, because when these traditional or indigenous conflict resolution mechanisms, they use their spiritual knowledge. This spiritual knowledge will help them to give decision, and finally it will have a kind of fair or win-win approach. So if you take it the indigenous one, it looks like fair. That one may not be. It's up to the person, up to the written document, and up to personal judgment of the judge to give decision, and finally he or she has to know and investigate the evidences presented. So three things are very vital in formal legal system. One, the evidence is presented. Second, the personal judgment that the judge imposed or used. Third, the written laws. Laws should be enforced. When you come to that of the traditional or indigenous conflict resolution mechanism, there is no written laws. They will be binding, they will bind by unwritten laws. Laws are not written, but it is in the minds of the elders or the one who lead that resolution mechanisms or methods. And finally, they have to, by the way, they should know what to say and how to say. And if an individual failed to, or he or she fails to enforce the decision given by the traditional mechanisms, there is a kind of sanction imposed upon the person by the local community. Whereas when it comes to that of the legal system, the rules are there. If you are failed to accept and enforce the decision given, there is legally binding sanction or laws. So these are a little bit difference between these two systems.
Yeah, how can indigenous knowledge be integrated in education system?
So far, we haven't inculcated or introduced this knowledge to the education system, not only the education system, even the other systems as well. But there is a kind of improvement in attitude. There is attitudinal change. That change maybe results inculcation of this knowledge in education system and in court system and in various kinds of sectoral systems and sectoral policies. So far, in my personal view, I haven't seen any ideas or concepts introduced in education system so far.
Why is language important for conveying indigenous knowledge?
The major tools, one of the major tools to transfer indigenous knowledge is oral tradition. It's not written, so orally transmitted. So language has a power to inculcate or to introduce this idea in the minds of the people. So those who have proper and higher power of expressions, so that they can enforce. If you are orator, so you will win, you will win the person to accept or to reject what you are saying. So the language that you use, the language power that you use, the power of words that you imposed to introduce, to transfer, and inculcate that idea in the mind of the people will have its own crucial role.
In Walkita University, what works have you done so far to preserve this indigenous knowledge?
We are trying, we are attempting a lot to introduce what indigenous knowledge to the public, especially the scientific community. The scientific community has to understand and even has to accept what's indigenous knowledge and its importance as well. And research has to focus on that area. It has to be the focus of the area. The universities are the place where knowledge is produced, and again, it is the center for excellence. So the knowledge has to be produced. What kind of knowledge are we producing in the university? So far, we are producing, science-based knowledge, research-based knowledge, science-based knowledge, research-based knowledge is absolutely international knowledge. It is scientific knowledge. Scientific knowledge is dominating the indigenous knowledge. Now there has to be a paradigm shift. There has to be a back shift to one's identity. So when I say identity, indigenous knowledge is one of the identity that we created in lifetime. So we created it once because we are living it. We are living our indigenous knowledge because we are living in indigenous community. So as long as we are living in the indigenous community, we are producing and enhancing indigenous knowledge. So there is a contradiction. What we are living, what we grown up, and what we are in is different. What we are in the university is in scientific and research-based knowledge. Now, fact is produced. Fact is produced because of finding. Fact is produced because of research results. So research result is coming to be fact. Therefore, fact is taking its higher throne, the upper throne. So there has to be dethroning. We have to dethrone the fact that we placed because of the findings that we produced. So research now has to come to its origin. Research should come and trace back to its origin. Research should trace back to one's identity. Research should come to focus on indigenous and local area knowledge. So now we are trying, we are attempting, we are exerting our effort to produce knowledge area-focused knowledge, local area-focused knowledge, the knowledge that we grown in. Because I grown in my community, in my society, so I build different knowledge that I have gained from my society. So my society is living by their knowledge. So there are a number of unwritten knowledge, a number of unexpressed knowledge, not expressed knowledge. There are a number of unpublished knowledge and unproduced knowledge, which is vested, which is enshrined in people's mind. So this should come to the public, this should come to the front, this should come to the throne. So now the throne is by the scientific, by the international knowledge. So we decolonize, we colonized, we are under colonization of the international knowledge. So there should be, as I told you, there should be a paradigm shift. The paradigm shift has to come to the indigenous knowledge. Now we are doing this, and we are exerting and we are producing some kind of research that focuses on the indigenous knowledge.
You are from Oromo community, and I need you to just tell us how indigenous knowledge is exercised in Oromo community and your area.
There are many people and many diverse community, like dominant Oromo people are there, and others Gurage, and Amhara, and others are there. So I live with that mixed community. Nearby, around not more than 30 kilometers, Sidama people are there. And if you go apart from that, Olaita and some others are there. So I'm lucky because I'm there, I'm from there. And I speak, and when I say indigenous knowledge, I mean there are indigenous language. So I'm perfect in indigenous knowledge in Afan Oromo. I'm perfect in indigenous knowledge in Guraginya. I'm perfect in indigenous knowledge in Amharic. And I speak a little bit English. And I tried my best to listen the other language. So this is one of the language aspects as part and parcel of the indigenous knowledge. When you come to that, there are different, like wedding ceremonies are there, and funeral ceremonies are there, and the court systems are there. And if I'm not mistaken, there are 4 major kinds of wedding, like how the two people, they come together and get marriage. And there are different mechanisms of wedding ceremonies. People, they get marriage. So this knowledge, even the court system, even traditional conflict mechanism systems, and these and that are part and parcel of the indigenous society, the indigenous community, and indigenous people. Indigenous people produce more untouched, very rich and virgin knowledge. Indigenous knowledge, I can say, is a virgin knowledge.
Can we say indigenous knowledge is in the Gada system?
Yeah, Gada system is one of the part of the Gada system is Gudifecha. Gudifecha is part of that. You can accustom people, you can accept people, you can make people part of your life, you can make people part of your family because of that. And you can't find this in other area. Somehow recently the Europeans and others, they started this one. They count people and they adopt people. Adoption is there. But as far as I know, this is started earlier here. But so far not introduced. But not so far is launched to the public, and it is not actually introduced.
That means is Gudifecha some part of indigenous knowledge?
Yes. Who taught them? If I ask you your family, you tell me that your families are here and there, this and that. How do you know? Because you've grown there, you live there, you have your own practice there. So that they make you part of family. So being a family of that particular people will give you, an advantage to be taken as your member. So when you take an individual because of the Gudifecha, you are making that person the family members. So even though you don't have blood relationship, you created strong bond because of the consent, the goodwill that you exerted on them.
What role do NGOs play in advancing indigenous knowledge in Ethiopia?
I'm afraid to say they played their role to advocate, advance, foster, increase, and introduce this. I urge them, including GOs and NGOs, to focus and to come back to their original identity and to investigate this rich knowledge that we have in our local area.
What practices empower women's leadership?
I can't say they are empowered well, but they have their own role. When I say role, for instance, if you take family members, the one who has a major role is in that particular family is mother. Mother plays a pivotal role. So when the two childs get into conflict, it is she who can manage the things. So that kind of practice, it's your mother that tells you to have leadership experience at home. She will tell you to do this and that. And it's your mother that tells you that you have to take the throne of your father, the throne of her. So this is one part of, exercising leadership. So leadership is there, parenting style is there, being economic is there, taking oneself, caring oneself is there, and taking, your role, the father's role, the mother's role, the elder's role is given by the mother than the father, because father is doing outside of the home, and everything is performed by mother. It's under the mother control, so she's mother that can do. So this can be expanded. It has to be expanded outside, and nowadays we are observing many people, many women here and there to take role of doing this and that activities.
What role do women play in preserving indigenous knowledge?
When your health is in problem, it's your mother who cares. In older time, a long time ago, traditionally people have been treated, and when their health is in problem, and when they are in quarrel, they are, the quarrel is resolved, the dispute is resolved at home, and home economy is at home. The name is home economy. The economy is administered at home. That has been done by mother. So this and that is the parts and the source of indigenous knowledge.
What role do ceremonies play in preserving indigenous knowledge?
Yeah, the mothers they come together, they discuss their social issue, they share their idea, they share their leadership experience, and they share their family experience, how they lead their family, and how they lead their husband, and there are different occasions. And in funeral, it's mother, the one who administering and doing many activities at home. So these are social issues will be administered, social issues will be carried out at home. It's because of the mothers, because of our sisters, because of our younger brothers and younger sisters at home.
What is the future of indigenous knowledge in changing the world?
Yeah, if things are going in this pace, I'm optimistic that indigenous will take its upper hand. Because Africa in general, East Africa in particular, Ethiopia in very particular, they are shifting their face to their identity, their original identity, which is indigenous knowledge. So the vision is bright. People are tracing back to their origin. People are coming to their identity. So as far as my knowledge concerned, what my observation told me and what my observation helped me to understand is the fate of the future is bright, because indigenous knowledge and international knowledge will go hand in hand.
What message would you like to share about this indigenous knowledge to the viewers watching us?
I urge people, the scientific community, educators, media people, and media in general, and research centers, and higher education institutions, universities, colleges, and TVT, and schools in particular, policymakers, and curriculum designers, and others, including the leading policymakers, and even ruling parties and opposition parties. They have unreserved and lion's share to bring back and to decolonize the Western knowledge. The knowledge that is imposed upon us has to be decolonized, and indigenous knowledge has to get its own proper place, and so that indigenous knowledge and the international knowledge, they come together. And by the way, they do not contradict each other. Rather, one will give an input to the others, so they can go hand in hand. So we have to give special attention, due attention for indigenous knowledge. This is my message.
Kamil Nureddin, Director for Culture, Language and Indigenous Knowledge at Walqita University, I thank you very much for your precious time and deep insights.
Thanks so much, and I'm happy to see you and to have an interview with you, and thanks so much again.
You have been watching OBN Horn of Africa, our weekly program Future Africa. I hope you have got something special in our today's discussion. Thank you very much for watching this program, and stay connected with other programs of OBN Horn of Africa.